I have lived in this village all my life, and now I am 100 years old.
Snow does not fall evenly here. It arrives in silence, not as weather, but as a slow loss of access, a gradual closing of movement across the valley. On a narrow road carved into the side of a cliff above the Sutlej River, a truck remains frozen in place. Ahead, the road is buried under fresh snow and fallen rock. Behind, retreat is no longer possible. Below, the river continues its descent through stone, unchanged by delay, danger, or human presence. Higher up the slope, thin smoke rises from stone-roofed houses scattered across the mountainside. Inside, life continues in quiet routines, visible only in fragments from a distance, yet entirely shaped by the conditions outside.
In places where winter rules the land, endurance becomes a way of life.
In some parts of the valley, movement through villages is not casual, it is measured. Certain spaces are entered with awareness, not habit, reflecting long-held local traditions of respect toward places, homes, and community boundaries shaped by isolation and environment. Not isolation from people, but discipline within survival. And the question emerges not as curiosity, but as necessity. How does life continue in a place where even the land refuses permanence? This is Kinnaur, a narrow Himalayan corridor formed not by openness, but by compression. The Sutlej River cuts through it as it descends from Tibet into India, carving a deep channel between rock faces that rise almost vertically on both sides. There is no wide valley floor, no continuous stretch of land, only fragments of usable space suspended between steep slope and deep river gorge. Settlements such as Kalpa, Sangla, Rekungpio, and Chitkul exist not on flat terrain, but on narrow ledges where stability is limited and constantly maintained. Above them, the Kinnaur Kailash range rises beyond 6,000 meters. These peaks are not passive backdrops. They actively influence life below, redirecting wind, trapping clouds, and shifting sunlight across the valley within hours.
The temperature never stays the same, and neither does the struggle to stay healthy.
Weather here does not change slowly. It changes abruptly. Clear skies can collapse into snowfall within a short span. Still air can turn heavy and unstable. Visibility can disappear without warning. During monsoon months, the terrain becomes especially fragile. Rain weakens already steep slopes, and landslides occur regularly, cutting across roads and temporarily isolating entire stretches of the valley. The Hindustan-Tibet Highway, NH5, the only major road through this region, is repeatedly disrupted. In many places, there is no alternate route, only waiting for clearance and repair. Winter introduces another layer of separation. Snowfall can isolate villages for days or weeks, reducing movement to essential needs only. Across short distances, elevation shifts dramatically, from around 1,500 meters to over 6,000. With it, climate, vegetation, and survival conditions change completely. Because here, the land does not provide stability, it demands adaptation. Human presence in Kinnaur did not emerge from comfort or opportunity. It emerged from necessity within movement. For centuries, this region formed part of a high-altitude corridor linking Tibet with the Indian plains. Not a settled route, but a demanding passage used for trade, migration, and seasonal crossings across the Himalayas. Caravans once moved through these slopes, carrying salt from high plateaus, wool from pastoral communities, grain from lower valleys, and ideas that traveled quietly along with survival. But this movement was never easy. It followed terrain that tested endurance more than speed. Narrow ridges, unstable slopes, and shifting weather patterns meant every journey carried uncertainty. And along these routes, something repeated itself. Not all who passed through continued onward. Some stopped, not because the land invited settlement, but because it allowed no further movement. Over time, stopping became staying. Staying became structure. Structure slowly became community.
I work hard every day in this village, but my heart remains happy.
There are also oral traditions preserved in the valley that speak of distant ancestry, stories loosely connected to wandering armies from the era of Alexander's passage through the wider region. These accounts exist not as confirmed history, but as inherited memory, carried through generations as identity rather than record. A reminder of how isolation reshapes even the way origins are remembered. Early settlements formed only where survival conditions briefly aligned, a slope stable enough to hold soil, a water source that did not disappear with seasons, and ground that resisted collapse long enough to build upon. From these fragile points, settlement did not expand outward. It moved upward along the slopes, adapting to whatever space the mountains allowed. What began as adaptation slowly became inheritance, and what began as survival eventually became permanence. In Kinnaur, life begins before light fully reaches the valley floor. Sunlight descends in stages, first touching the highest ridges, then slowly moving downward across forests and rock faces, until it finally reaches the scattered settlements carved into steep slopes. Work begins with it, not as routine, but as timing dictated by environment. Terraced agriculture defines the most visible form of survival here. Each terrace is a deliberate interruption in the slope, stone walls holding back soil against gravity, water, and erosion. These are not natural formations. They are continuous human constructions, maintained season after season, and they remain unstable by nature. A single collapse can erase years of labor in moments. Yet repair is not optional. It is part of survival itself. Farming in Kinnaur is not expansion into land. It is the careful preservation of limited space. Small plots carry crops such as barley, peas, and potatoes, fields that appear fragmented from a distance but are essential at the household level. Every patch contributes to food security across long and uncertain seasons. The growing cycle is short. The weather is unpredictable. A sudden frost, an early snowfall, or an unseasonal storm can end an entire harvest without warning. Still, cultivation continues, because stopping is not a choice available here. Higher up the slopes, apple orchards transform steep terrain into seasonal productivity. What was once considered unusable land now supports structured cultivation across entire hillsides.
इसका रंग लाल है और ये throughout the season अभी ये चला हुआ है आड़ू का ही.
During harvest, the valley shifts in rhythm. Movement becomes coordinated and continuous. Ladders remain fixed against trees for hours. Hands move between branches and crates without pause, not for efficiency, but because weather does not wait. A single storm arriving at the wrong time can affect an entire season. Beyond agriculture, livestock continues to move along high-altitude trails. Sheep and goats follow inherited routes between seasonal grazing grounds. These paths are not formally marked or mapped. They exist through repetition, memory, and generational knowledge of terrain and weather. Inside homes, survival becomes visible preparation. Firewood is stored long before winter arrives. Dried fodder is prepared carefully, ensuring livestock can survive when access to grazing land disappears. Housing reflects the same logic. Stone structures retain heat during long winters. Timber supports roofs designed to bear heavy snow loads. Angled surfaces allow accumulation to slide rather than collapse inward. But the strongest structure here is not physical. It is collective dependence. Terraces are built together. Harvests are completed through shared labor. Scarcity is managed through distribution, not ownership. Survival here depends on shared effort across households. Adaptation in Kinnaur is not innovation in isolation. It is accumulated response shaped by repetition over generations. In this high Himalayan corridor, every system exists because it has been tested repeatedly against slope, snow, and time. Architecture reflects environmental pressure. Buildings are not designed to resist nature, but to persist alongside it. Stone, timber, and earth are combined not for permanence in the modern sense, but for endurance within constant change. In higher villages, wooden bridges are rebuilt almost every year after monsoon damage. Not repaired in fragments, but reconstructed entirely. This cycle of destruction and rebuilding is not seen as disruption. It is part of continuity.
Monsoon rains can wash away bridges, leaving entire villages completely cut off.
Clothing follows the same logic. Layers shift with conditions that can change within hours. Sunlight turning into wind, wind into snowfall, without warning, across the valley walls. Agriculture exists not as expansion, but as stabilization of steep terrain. Terraces are held together through constant maintenance, where land is not owned in the conventional sense, but actively sustained against erosion and collapse. Even memory carries adaptation. Oral narratives, including distant ancestral links such as Alexander-era traditions, function less as historical claims and more as continuity markers. Ways of preserving identity in a region shaped by isolation and movement across generations. Nothing here remains stable long enough to become fixed. Even spiritual architecture follows environmental logic. Monasteries are often positioned on elevated ground or stable rock formations. Their locations are not only symbolic, but practical, chosen where the earth is least likely to shift, and where visibility over the valley allows early awareness of weather changes and seasonal movement. Livestock systems form another layer of survival. Goats and sheep are not secondary resources, but active participants in endurance. Across this entire landscape, adaptation is not an event. It is a continuous condition of living. In Kinnaur, culture cannot be separated from geography. In this steep Himalayan system, certain spaces are treated with inherited restraint, not because rules are written, but because the landscape itself has taught caution over generations. Movement, behavior, and interaction with space are shaped by awareness of fragility rather than formal restriction. Belief systems here are closely tied to the physical environment of the valley. Mountains are not distant formations. They are active presences that influence weather patterns, slope stability, and the rhythm of daily life. In this way, geography and perception are deeply connected. Monasteries in higher elevations act as both spiritual and geographical anchors. Their placement often corresponds with more stable terrain, marking points in the valley where human presence can continue with reduced environmental disruption. They also serve as quiet observational points over changing weather systems and seasonal shifts. These spaces influence life not through instruction, but through presence. Daily routines naturally adjust around them, integrating spiritual geography into survival behavior. Religious practices follow seasonal cycles closely. Rituals mark transitions in agriculture, the approach of winter, and moments when the landscape becomes unpredictable or unstable. In this sense, festivals are not isolated celebrations of abundance. They are structured acknowledgements of continuity within uncertainty. Community life in the Sutlej Valley reflects necessity rather than separation. Households function as interconnected units of labor, resource sharing, and mutual dependence. Multiple generations live in close proximity, not only through tradition, but because survival requires constant coordination across age and skill. Culture here functions as a system of survival, shaping movement, behavior, and restraint. Certain village spaces are approached with visible awareness, not because they are forbidden, but because they are remembered. Places shaped by past instability, environmental shifts, or inherited caution embedded in daily behavior. Because in a valley, where slopes remain unstable and terrain is constantly shifting, interaction itself must be measured. Belief extends naturally into survival systems. Small shrines placed along pathways often mark areas prone to landslides or difficult terrain transitions. Prayer flags move across ridgelines, not as decoration, but as visible markers of human presence within an unpredictable landscape. Monastic spaces in the upper valley create brief zones of stillness, places where sound, movement, and environmental pressure feel momentarily softened. For the communities living here, belief is not an external layer added to survival. It is embedded within it. Because in high-altitude environments like Kinnaur, belief is not abstract. It becomes a way of organizing uncertainty within daily life. Winter in Kinnaur is not an event. It is a slow restructuring of life itself. It begins silently at the highest elevations, where snow gathers long before the valleys below show any sign of change. From there, it moves downward, layer by layer, reshaping movement, access, and survival across the entire Sutlej Valley system. By the time it reaches the inhabited slopes, the transition is no longer visible. It is already complete. Terraces disappear under white silence. Mountain roads along the cliff edges become unstable or fully blocked. Footpaths that once connected villages dissolve beneath repeated snowfall. Movement is no longer planned. It becomes conditional, decided by weather rather than intention. The Sutlej corridor, already narrow and fragile, becomes increasingly restricted. Landslides, triggered by freeze-thaw cycles, combine with snow accumulation, cutting off sections of the highway without warning. Connectivity reduces gradually, then suddenly feels absolute. In this phase, monasteries in the upper valley take on a quieter role, not as centers of separation from daily life, but as stabilizing points within it. When external movement slows, these spaces provide continuity through routine rituals and presence, helping communities maintain structure in a landscape that feels temporarily suspended. Livestock becomes critical during this period. Goats and sheep are moved closer to shelters. Feed is rationed carefully. Their survival is not secondary, it directly determines how households endure the months ahead. Each animal becomes part of a shared survival equation between stored food, human labor, and environmental uncertainty. Inside homes, the valley contracts into limited space. Rooms are shared more closely as temperatures drop. Fire is maintained continuously, not as comfort, but as resistance against cold that settles into stone and wood alike. Water is collected in advance before freezing conditions intensify. Food supplies are drawn strictly from stored reserves. Outside activity is reduced only to what cannot be postponed. Villages remain inhabited, but movement nearly disappears. When pathways open, even for short windows, communities respond quickly. Supplies are exchanged, and assistance is shared. Dependence is not hidden. It becomes visible, structured, and necessary. Across the slopes, silence becomes the dominant presence. No traffic on the roads, no movement along ridgelines. Only snow accumulating over homes, terraces, and paths that carried constant activity only months before. Yet life does not stop. It reduces itself to essentials.
A fire kept alive through the night, a path cleared by hand, a route reopened temporarily, just enough to restore contact.
Survival becomes repetition under constraint. In Kinnaur, change is not an interruption. It is the constant condition of life. The valley does not offer stability in the conventional sense. Instead, it offers cycles of snow, rain, silence, and return, each reshaping how life is carried forward along the steep corridors of the Sutlej.
Nothing here remains fixed long enough to become permanent. Yet nothing disappears completely either. Each generation inherits not certainty, but adjustment. Terraces carved into impossible slopes are repaired again and again, not as innovation, but as continuation. Paths erased by winter are rediscovered each spring. Stone homes are strengthened not to resist change, but to endure it. What appears as repetition is, in reality, survival refined over time. Even the highest expressions of life here, monasteries, seasonal rituals, village gatherings, are not separate from this rhythm. They exist within it, marking moments where people pause inside a landscape that never truly pauses. In this way, belief, labor, and environment are not separate forces. They form a single system of endurance, one where meaning is not added to survival, but woven into it. Nothing in this valley exists outside that system. And so life continues, not because the land is forgiving, but because it is understood. Not because conditions are stable, but because adaptation has become inheritance. In Kinnaur, survival is not a moment of triumph. It is a process without conclusion. And as the mountains continue their silent reshaping of the valley, one question remains: quiet, unresolved, and enduring. Survival is not a moment of triumph. It is a process without conclusion.